always thought I knew my son. I thought I knew the woman he married. For years, I repeated the same phrase to anyone who asked about my family. I'm lucky. My boy takes care of me. His wife is an angel. I said it at church, at the grocery store, in the waiting room at the clinic. I had said it so many times that I started to believe it like a prayer. I never imagined that one day I would be hiding behind my neighbor's lace curtains, watching my own front door like a detective, pretending to be out of town just to find out what my family was doing when they thought I couldn't see them. If you're interested in this story, hit the like button, subscribe, and type interested in the comments, and I will give you a heart. The night everything changed started quietly. The sky was clear, the street was calm, and from my living room window, I could see the familiar yellow glow of the street lamp shining on the sidewalk. I've swept for the past 30 years. I was supposed to be packing for a trip to visit my sister in another city. At least, that's what my son believed. In reality, my suitcase was half empty on the bed, and my heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. I had already dropped the first bomb at dinner. Between the chicken stew and the salad, I calmly announced, "Tomorrow I'm going away for a few days. My sister has been begging me to visit. I think it'll do me good." The reaction was immediate, and it was wrong. My son Daniel looked up from his plate too quickly. His wife Carla froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. For a second, both of them had the exact same expression. Surprise mixed with relief. Not sadness, not concern, relief. "That's great, Mom," Daniel said after a moment, forcing a smile that never reached his eyes. "You deserve a little break, change of scenery, right?" Carla jumped in a second later, her voice overly sweet, her gestures suddenly exaggerated. "Yes, it'll be wonderful for you. Don't worry about anything here. We'll handle the house. Just rest, enjoy your sister, and don't think about chores." The way she emphasized, "Don't worry about anything here," felt like a script she had rehearsed. It stuck in my chest like a thorn. If all of this had happened a year ago, I probably would have believed them. But by the time I announced that fake trip, too many small things had already started to feel wrong, like tiny cracks in a wall that suddenly make you notice the whole structure might be shifting. It began with the whispers. Whispering in your own house is a very particular sound. You can't always make out the words, but you know when the tone changes. For months, every time I walked past their bedroom door or the kitchen at night, voices would drop. Screens would turn face down. Phones would slide out of sight. Laughter would cut off the instant my footsteps got close. The first few times, I blamed my age. I'm 65, not ancient, but I know my hearing isn't what it used to be. I told myself I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into nothing, but the nothing kept piling up. The first big change was the office. That room used to be my late husband's pride. After he passed, I turned it into a sort of storage and memory room. Bookshelves full of his papers, an old desk, boxes with old photos, documents, and little things that meant nothing to anyone but us. It was never locked. There was nothing in there worth stealing, only a whole life on shelves. Then, one afternoon, I reached for the doorknob, and it didn't turn. I checked again, nothing. Someone had locked it. Later that day, I asked casually while drying plates at the sink, "Did one of you lock your father's office? My key doesn't work." Carla didn't even let Daniel breathe before she answered. "Oh yes, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. There's a humidity problem in there. The ceiling is leaking. We called someone to check it. We didn't want your things to get damaged, so we locked it until we can fix it. It was too fast, too polished, like she'd practiced it. I stared at her for a moment and forced a smile. A leak, I said. Strange. I didn't see any stains. We just noticed it, she replied, her eyes sliding away. Barely visible, but we prefer to be safe. That was the first time in my life I felt like a guest in my own home. Then came the night visits, not mine, theirs. One Thursday night, close to 11, I heard the front door open very softly. Not like when Daniel comes home from work, not with the casual slam he never learned to control. This was a careful opening, a quiet closing. I sat up in bed, held my breath, and listened. Muffled voices, a soft laugh that wasn't my son's, the sound of a suitcase being dragged on the floor. I slid my feet into my slippers and went to the hallway, keeping to the shadows. From there, I could see just enough of the entrance if I leaned forward. The hallway light was off, but the living room lamp cast a pale glow. I saw Carla at the door with a young woman I had never seen before. The girl had a small suitcase and a backpack. They spoke in low voices. I saw the girl take something out of her pocket and hand it to Carla. Cash. It was clear, even from a distance. Carla slipped the bills into her cardigan pocket in one smooth move. And then she smiled and gestured down the hallway, not toward the guest room we actually use for visitors, but toward my husband's old office, the humid one. My heart started hammering. I stood frozen as I heard the soft click of a key. Carla opened the office door. Light spilled into the hallway for a second, then disappeared as the door closed again. Footsteps. A suitcase wheel scratching the wood floor. Silence. I stayed there in the dark for a long time until my legs started to shake. The next morning at breakfast, no one mentioned anything. Carla hummed as she made coffee. Daniel scrolled through his phone, reading the news as if nothing had happened. Did you sleep well? I asked, my voice almost steady. Like a log, he answered without looking up. I was exhausted, Carla added, flashing that perfectly practiced smile. Liars, I thought, both of you. After that, I couldn't unsee the pattern. Some nights there was nothing, just the normal quiet of the house. But other nights, always late, someone would arrive. Sometimes a young couple, sometimes a man alone with a laptop bag, sometimes two women talking in another language, always with bags, always greeted by Carla, always guided toward the locked office. I felt like my mind was splitting in half. One half still wanted to believe they were helping someone short term, maybe friends of a friend, maybe coworkers, people who needed somewhere to sleep a night or two. The other half knew I was lying to myself. People who are helped don't hand over cash at the door. People who are guests in a family home don't sneak in at 11:30 at night while the supposed homeowner is asleep down the hall. I tried talking to my son one afternoon when Carla wasn't around. He was in the backyard cleaning the barbecue grill. I watched him for a moment, remembering when he was 5 and used to run through that same yard with scraped knees and sticky fingers. I swallowed hard and went outside. Daniel, I started carefully. Is everything all right? You've seemed different lately. He wiped his hands on a rag and forced a smile. We're fine, Mom. Just stressed. Work is crazy. You know how it is. I heard people arriving at night sometimes, I continued. Friends of yours? The rag in his hand stilled for half a second. Just some coworkers who needed a place to crash, that's all, he said casually. We're just helping out. Why did they bother you? We can stop inviting them if it's a problem. That's not the point, I replied softly. I just like to know who's in my house. You don't have to worry about anything, Mom, he said a little too quickly. We've got everything under control. There it was again. Don't worry, we've got everything under control, as if I were a guest, as if I were an old woman in a nursing home, not the owner of every brick in that house. I went back inside and sat at the kitchen table, staring at a water ring on the wood surface. On paper, everything looked fine. I had a roof over my head, food, company. My son was under the same roof. His wife cooked, cleaned, smiled. To any outsider, it would be a picture of a caring family. So why did I feel like the ground was shifting under my feet? The answer came from the last person I expected, my neighbor, Mrs. Parker. We had lived across from each other for more than 20 years. She's 73, widowed, sharp as a needle, and the kind of woman who notices everything on the street without even trying. We weren't best friends, but we shared small talk at the mailbox, exchanged cakes at Christmas, that sort of quiet, neighborly bond. One Saturday afternoon, she knocked at my door holding a pie dish. I made too much apple crumble, she said, as she always did when she wanted an excuse to talk. We sat at my kitchen table with tea. After a while, she leaned forward, her eyes serious. Can I ask you something, dear? She began slowly. Of course. Do you know you have different people going in and out of your house at night? She asked bluntly. No softness, no preamble, just the truth. My hand tightened around my cup. You noticed that? She nodded. For months now. They don't look like family. They don't come with flowers or casseroles. They come with suitcases and leave early in the morning. I see them from my bedroom window. I've counted at least 10 different faces in the last 6 weeks. I felt the world tilt slightly. Why didn't you say anything before? I asked, a mix of fear and hurt rising in my throat. I wasn't sure if maybe you had turned part of the house into a rental, she answered carefully. It's your property, your business, but last week I saw something that made me uncomfortable. My mouth went dry. What did you see? She sighed, looking at me with that expression older people give each other when they know the truth will hurt. One of the men who left early in the morning, maybe in his 50s, stopped on the sidewalk to smoke. Carla opened the door to say goodbye. I saw him hand her a roll of bills. Not a couple of notes, a roll. She counted it quickly and put it in an envelope. Then she shut the door and he walked away. It was like being punched in the chest. I had seen money change hands before, but hearing it from someone else, someone outside, stripped away my last layer of denial. It was not my imagination, I whispered. No, dear, Mrs. Parker said gently. Something is going on. I don't like secrets in a house where an older woman lives. I've seen too many stories on the news. We sat in silence for a moment. The clock ticked on the wall. My mind raced with images, the locked office, the night visitors, the money at the door, the careful lies. I felt stupid, betrayed, cornered in a house I had paid for with decades of work. What would you do if you were me? I finally asked. She looked out the window at my front yard, the rose bushes my husband planted, the porch swing that used to squeak under his weight. I would stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, she said firmly, and I would stop playing blind. They're doing something they don't want you to know. If you ask them directly, they'll just lie to your face again. So if you want to know the truth, you need to see what they do when they think you're gone. Her words hit me like cold water. When they think I'm gone. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The idea grew slowly, like a shadow taking shape at the corner of the room. If I stayed in the house, they would keep pretending. If I confronted them without proof, they would deny everything, twist the story, maybe even turn it against me. But if I left, or at least made them believe I had left, the masks might fall. By the time the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, the plan was fully formed in my head. I would pretend to travel. I would stage it carefully. I would pack a suitcase, call my sister in a loud voice they could overhear, let them drive me to the bus station, hug them goodbye. Then I would disappear in the opposite direction and watch my own house from a distance like it belonged to someone else. The next day, I went to see Mrs. Parker. She opened the door before I even knocked fully, as if she'd been expecting me. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. Her house smelled like lavender and furniture polish, that particular clean scent of older homes where no child has run through in years. "I'm going to take your advice," I told her, sitting at her dining table. My voice didn't shake this time. I felt strangely calm. "I'm going to pretend to travel, but I'll actually be here, watching." Her eyebrows rose. "Where will you stay?" I took a deep breath. "I was going to ask if you'd let me stay in your guest room for a few days, just until I figure out what they're doing. From your upstairs window, you can see my front yard, can't you?" She nodded slowly. "You can see the door, the driveway, and a bit of the living room if the curtains are open," she confirmed. Then she leaned forward, her eyes full of a mixture of curiosity and protective anger. "If they're taking advantage of you, I want to see it too." We made the plan together. It felt almost absurd, like we were two old women plotting a heist. But the more we talked, the more serious it became. I'd pack a suitcase with enough clothes to make the act believable. I'd talk loudly to my sister on the phone the night before and the morning of. Mrs. Parker would be ready to receive me at her back door as soon as my son drove away from the bus station. We agreed on a signal. I'd call her twice, hang up, and then call again. When I was on my way back from the terminal, that evening at dinner, I started the performance. "Tomorrow, I'm going to Linda's house," I announced casually as I served soup. "She's been insisting I visit. I can't keep postponing. I'll stay a week." This time, I was ready. I watched their faces carefully. Danielle's fork clinked against the plate. "A week?" he repeated. That's great, Mom." Carla's eyes lit up too quickly. "You'll love it," she said. "Your sister's house is so peaceful. We'll take care of everything here. You won't have to worry about the bills or the mail or the plants. We'll handle it all." There it was again. That "we'll take care of everything here," that hunger in their eyes they didn't even realize they were showing. Relief, excitement, anticipation. Not a trace of sadness at the idea of my absence. "I'll leave tomorrow morning," I continued calmly. "No need to get up with me. I'll take a taxi to the station." No, I'll drive you," Daniel interrupted quickly. "It's safer. Besides, I want to make sure you get on the right bus. You know how confusing those platforms are." He wanted to see me leave, to be sure I was gone. My suspicions hardened into something sharper. "All right," I agreed lightly. "If you insist." That night, I packed my suitcase in my bedroom, making sure to leave the door open just enough for them to see if they walked past. I folded clothes with unnecessary noise, talking on the phone with my sister loudly on speaker. Of course, my sister knew everything. I had explained it to her in a trembling voice earlier that day. She was furious at them. She promised to play along. "Yes, I'm finally coming," I said into the phone, knowing Carla was in the hallway, pretending not to listen. "I'll stay a week. Yes, I'll arrive before lunch. No, I won't bring too much, just a small suitcase." I almost feel Carla's eyes on my back. The next morning, I woke before everyone else. I showered, dressed, and closed the suitcase with a click that seemed to echo through the whole house. I took one last look at my bedroom. It looked normal, the quilt on the bed, the framed photos on the nightstand, the cross on the wall. But for the first time in decades, my house didn't feel entirely mine. At 8:30, Daniel honked from the driveway. I dragged the suitcase to the door myself. Carla rushed out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Well, let me help you with that," she said, grabbing the handle. "Did you double check your meds, your charger, your sweater?" Her concern sounded right, but her eyes betrayed her. There was something like impatience there. Not at me leaving, but at the fact that I wasn't gone yet. "Yes, I have everything," I replied, forcing myself to smile. "Take care of the house." "Don't worry," she repeated with that now familiar phrase. "We'll take care of everything." On the way to the bus station, Daniel made small talk about the weather, about gas prices, about some game he'd seen on TV. None of it mattered. I watched him as he drove. His jaw was tighter than usual. His fingers tapped the steering wheel at every red light. When we reached the station, he parked and got out with me, carrying the suitcase. "The bus to Riverside leaves from platform 3, he said, looking at the digital board. "You'll be fine." "Of course," I replied calmly. "I've taken buses alone before." He hugged me tightly, pressing his lips to my hair. "Call me when you arrive, okay?" he murmured. "I will," I promised. "Drive safe." I waited until he disappeared through the automatic doors. I watched him through the glass as he walked back to the car, checked his phone, and drove away. I counted to 300 in my head, my heart beating faster with every number. Then I took a deep breath, turned around, and walked straight out of the station through the opposite exit. Outside, I hailed a cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. I hesitated for half a second. Saying it out loud made the whole plan feel suddenly real. "Pine Street," I answered. "Number 42. Around the corner from the park." That was Mrs. Parker's house. As the car pulled away from the station, I looked back once through the rear window. For the first time in 40 years, I was leaving my house behind with my name still on the deed, but my trust already broken. I wasn't going on vacation. I wasn't going to rest. I was going to spy on my own son. And I had no idea that what I was about to discover in the following days wouldn't just destroy the image I had of him and his wife. It would reveal a secret so cold, so calculated, that it would change the course of my entire life. Watching my own house from across the street. The taxi dropped me off 1 block away from Mrs. Parker's house. I didn't want anyone I knew to see me stepping out of a cab so close to my own street when I was supposedly on a bus to another city. Old habits die hard. Even in the middle of a plan like this, I still worried about gossip. I paid the driver, grabbed my suitcase, and walked the rest of the way on the sidewalk, keeping my head down like a thief in a life that used to be mine. Mrs. Parker was waiting for me. She must have been looking through the curtains because the door opened before I even put my hand on the bell. "Come in quick," she whispered, as if we were in some kind of spy movie. Her gray hair was pinned up in its usual bun, but today there was a spark in her eyes I had never seen before. Anger. Protective anger. I stepped inside, dragging my half-empty suitcase. The house felt safe and familiar. The smell of lavender, the tick of an old clock, the framed pictures of her kids and grandkids on the wall. It was the kind of house where nothing bad was supposed to happen. The kind of house I thought I had. Did he see you leave? She asked, closing the door quietly. Yes, I replied, sitting my suitcase down. He even walked me to the bus platform. He watched me walk away. As far as he's concerned, I'm on my way to Riverside right now. Good, she said. Then we have a head start. She led me upstairs to the guest room. It was small but cozy, floral bedspread, lace curtains, a little table lamp, a faint smell of old books. But the most important thing in that room was the window. From there, I could see my house perfectly. The front yard, the driveway, the front door, the living room curtains, the porch light. My life, framed like a television show. Sit, she told me, pulling a chair close to the window. I'll make some coffee. We might be here a while. The absurdity of the situation washed over me for a second. I was a 65-year-old woman hiding at her neighbor's house, watching her own front door like a stranger. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so heartbreaking. From the window, everything looked normal at first. The street was quiet, a dog barked in the distance. Somewhere, someone was mowing a lawn. My front door was closed. The curtains were drawn halfway, just like I'd left them. Nothing screamed secret or danger or betrayal. It was just my house, the one I had painted, repaired, cleaned, and paid for piece by piece with my late husband. Mrs. Parker came back with 2 mugs of coffee and set them on the windowsill. First rule, she said, sitting beside me. We don't jump to conclusions. We watch. We write down times, faces, anything unusual. If they're doing something wrong, they'll show us, and we'll have more than just suspicions. I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Do you really think it's that serious? I asked quietly. She looked at my house with narrowed eyes. People who do things in secret in someone else's home don't usually stop at small, she said. And your daughter-in-law doesn't have the face of someone who's just doing a favor. She has the face of someone running an operation. Her words made something twist painfully inside me. That word, operation. It made me feel like my home had been turned into a stage set without my consent. The morning went by slowly at first. At 10, Carla left the house, locking the front door behind her. She walked toward the bus stop with a reusable grocery bag over her shoulder. From up here, I could see everything her body language was saying. She was relaxed, free. There was none of the tension I had seen in her when I was still inside the house. Asking questions. She doesn't look worried that you're gone, Mrs. Parker observed. She looks lighter, I replied, surprised by how bitter my voice sounded. At 11:15, Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. My breath caught in my throat for a moment until I remembered he thought I was miles away. He parked, took off his tie in one quick motion, and walked into the house with his briefcase. He usually didn't come home this early on weekdays. Maybe he forgot something, I murmured, trying to give him one last bit of benefit of the doubt. Or maybe your absence let him change his schedule, Mrs. Parker replied. He stayed inside for about 40 minutes. We saw the living room lights flick on, then off. At one point, the front door opened and he took out a big black trash bag, dropping it in the bin with more force than necessary. I watched his face, tight mouth, eyes darting around like he wanted to be sure no one was watching. Then he disappeared back inside. What do you think he's doing? I whispered. Clearing evidence, she said flatly, or just cleaning. But if it was innocent, he wouldn't look like that. At noon, he left again, locking the door. The house went still. The stillness unnerved me. For years, I had associated quiet with safety in that house. Now, it felt like Silence was just another layer of disguise. Sometimes, Mrs. Parker said softly, the scariest things happen when a house looks the calmest. We spent the afternoon watching shadows move slowly across the yard as the sun shifted. A mail truck came by. The carrier left letters in my box, unaware that the supposed homeowner was sitting across the street watching. Another neighbor walked their dog. A kid rode a bicycle. Life went on, indifferent to the little war that was brewing in my living room. Are you all right? Mrs. Parker asked at one point, seeing the way my fingers were twisting the edge of my blouse. I feel like I abandoned my house, I answered honestly, like I walked out and surrendered it to them. It feels wrong. She shook her head. You didn't abandon it, she corrected. You stepped away to defend it. There's a difference. Her words soothed me for a moment. Nothing happened until late afternoon. Around 5:30, Daniel's car came back again, this time at his usual hour. He parked, got out calmly, and entered the house. 5 minutes later, Carla appeared at the corner, coming back from the bus stop with 2 grocery bags. She rang the bell. He opened. They kissed, just like any normal couple at the end of a workday. If you didn't know, Mrs. Parker murmured, you'd say they're the perfect pair. I did say that once. I said quietly, too many times. For a couple of hours, nothing seemed off. The lights moved from the kitchen to the dining room. At 7, we could see them through the thin curtains, sitting at the table, eating dinner, passing dishes, laughing. It was like watching strangers wearing my son's face. Then at 8:30, the temperature changed. First, the kitchen light went off. Only the living room lamp remained on. Carla appeared at the window, pulling the curtains just a bit more closed, but not entirely. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd say she was just settling in for the night. She always does that before people arrive, Mrs. Parker said. Half closed, enough to keep most people from seeing, but not enough to look suspicious. At 8:45, the first car slowed down in front of my house. It was a dark blue sedan. It parked with the hazard lights blinking for a moment. From inside, a young couple got out. They each had a small suitcase and backpacks. They weren't dressed like relatives coming to stay with family. They were dressed like travelers. Sneakers, comfortable clothes, the tired faces of people who had been on the road for hours. My stomach flipped. Look, Mrs. Parker pointed. There we go. We watched them walk up the path to my front door. Before they could ring the bell, the door opened. Carla stood there, smiling as if she were working reception at a hotel. She hugged no one. She didn't call them by name like old friends. There were no "how have you been" or "it's so good to see you." Just professional small talk. They talked for a moment. Then I saw it again, now from the outside. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded wad of cash. He counted the bills quickly. Carla held out her hand. The money passed from his fingers to hers as naturally as if she were accepting a delivery. She smiled, stepped aside, and let them in. There's your co-workers, Mrs. Parker murmured. I gripped the mug so hard my knuckles turned white. The next hour confirmed everything. At 9:30, another car arrived. This time, 2 women stepped out, talking in low voices, rolling carry-on suitcases. Same routine: bell, door, handshake, cash. Carla smiled, and they disappeared inside. At 10:15, a third guest showed up, a man in his 50s with a laptop bag and a weary expression. For a moment, I fixated on his shoes, polished but dusty at the edges, and thought, he has no idea whose house this really is. 3 groups in less than 2 hours, Mrs. Parker counted quietly, and this is just the first night you're watching. We could see shapes moving behind the curtains, people going down the hallway, lights turning on and off in different rooms. We saw silhouettes passing through what used to be my husband's office, the door that had been locked because of humidity. Now it glowed with warm light like any other bedroom. It's like they carved rooms out of your memories, Mrs. Parker said, almost to herself. Like they took your past and put a price on every square foot. The comparison made me feel physically sick. At one point, the living room light brightened and I could see it clearly. My dining table, the one I had bought with my first bonus after years of work, was now surrounded by strangers. They were eating takeout, laughing, sharing drinks. My son and Carla were there too, acting as hosts. Daniel carried an extra chair in, Carla poured drinks. The guests handed them something small, tips maybe, or just gratitude. To someone watching without context, it would have looked warm, homely, a cozy little gathering. To me, it looked like a betrayal with good lighting. Do you still doubt what they're doing? Mrs. Parker asked gently. No, I said. My voice sounded strange, calm, but with something broken underneath. No, I don't doubt it anymore. I was quiet for a long time after that. I stared at the house until my eyes hurt. Inside, life went on. People moving around the kitchen, brushing their teeth, disappearing down the hallway toward the bedrooms, lights turning off one by one. Around 11:30, the living room finally went dark. It's late, Mrs. Parker said softly. You should get some rest. We'll see what happens in the morning. I'm not sure I can sleep, I admitted. Try, she insisted. You'll need your strength. This is only the beginning. And she was right. The next morning, I woke before dawn as usual. Habit doesn't ask where you slept. I slipped from the bed and went straight back to the window, pulling the curtain aside. My house sat there, quiet under the pale blue of early morning. For a second, it looked like it always had at that hour. Then, at 6:15, the front door opened. The young couple from the blue sedan came out, carrying their suitcases. No hugs, no long goodbyes. A taxi waited for them at the curb. They put their luggage in the trunk, got in, and left. Carla didn't even step outside. She just waved from the doorway and closed the door. At 6:45, the 2 women walked out with their rolling bags, dragging them across my front path. Another car, another quick goodbye, another door closing. By 7:30, the man with the laptop bag left as well. This time, Daniel walked him out, shook his hand in a way that was all too businesslike, then watched him go. Within an hour, every guest had disappeared. At 8, my son came out in his work clothes, tie on, briefcase in hand. He locked the door and walked to his car like a respectable employee going to work. If a police officer, a social worker, or a census worker had passed by at that moment, they would have seen a perfectly normal scene, a man leaving his mother's house, ready for the day. Look at him, I whispered, my throat tight. You would never know what he's doing if you saw him like that. Mrs. Parker stood next to me, arms folded. Evil doesn't always look like a monster, dear, she said. Sometimes it looks like a good son in a nice shirt. Her sentence sank into me like a stone into deep water. The day passed, and the pattern repeated. Carla cleaning, changing sheets, hanging laundry that clearly didn't belong to 3 people. More towels than a normal household needed. More movements in and out of the mysterious office room. In the afternoon, she left with a folder under her arm. When she passed under the street lamp, I caught a glimpse of something inside. Papers, maybe contracts, something with highlighted lines. Did you see that? I asked. "What? The folder?" I said. She wasn't going to the grocery store. She had documents with her. Mrs. Parker narrowed her eyes. "Maybe meeting someone," she guessed. The next night, again, guests arrived, 2, then 3, then 5 people in total. Young, middle-aged, some with cameras hanging from their necks, some with backpacks, some in business shoes. Different faces, same routine. Money at the door, my son and Carla smiling, opening their arms, not for a hug, but for cash. By the end of the second night, I didn't just feel betrayed, I felt invaded. They're running a small hotel out of my house, I said in a flat voice, almost surprised by how calm I sounded. A secret hotel, without telling me, without asking my permission, using my rooms, my furniture, my electricity, my water, and putting the money in their pockets. And they only started behaving like this after they moved in? Mrs. Parker asked. Yes, I replied, my eyes never leaving the house. Before that, they were loving, helpful, kind, or maybe that was just the bait. We sat in silence. The words stuck between us like smoke. Beep. Something else started to bother me then. Not just what they were doing, but how they were acting throughout all of it. Not like two desperate people making a bad decision out of panic. They moved with routine, practice. Carla had a notebook she checked more than once in the kitchen. From this distance, I couldn't read it, but I recognized the posture of someone going through a list, keeping track of numbers, arrivals, departures. This isn't improvised, Mrs. Parker said, echoing my thoughts. She's been doing this for a while. The more I watched, the more one question started to grow inside me like a dark cloud. If they can lie to my face about something this big, what else are they hiding? The answer wouldn't come from watching the door. It would come from somewhere else, somewhere inside my own property that I no longer had access to. The office. My husband's old office, the one they had turned into a bedroom for strangers, the one they had locked, the one they said had humidity issues, the one that now, every night, glowed behind thick curtains, filled with the shadows of people I had never met. I need to get inside that room, I said suddenly. Mrs. Parker turned to me, startled. What? That office, I explained, pointing. There's something in there, not just the bed, not just luggage, something else. A business doesn't just run on people and sheets and cash. There must be a system, a plan, documents. You can't just walk back in, she reminded me. As far as they know, you're not even in town. If they see you, everything will explode before you know what's really going on. I know, I admitted, but I can't just stay here watching forever. I need proof, not just for me, for later, for whoever will believe me if this turns into something uglier than just renting rooms. Proof of what? She asked slowly. That was the moment when, deep down, I realized this might not just be about illegal rentals. The way Carla handled the money, the way Daniel looked over his shoulder even when they thought I had gone, the folder with documents, the whispers that had started months before the first stranger arrived. I don't know yet, I answered honestly, but something tells me the rooms are only the visible part. The real danger is in whatever they're planning around me. Mrs. Parker looked at me, serious now. Do you have anyone you trust outside of your family? A lawyer, perhaps? Yes, I said after a moment. I have someone. Her name surfaced in my mind like a lifeline. Elena, my old coworker who became a lawyer years ago. We hadn't spoken in months, but I knew if I called her and told her something was wrong, she would listen. "Then here's what we do," Mrs. Parker said, her voice steady, practical. "You keep watching tonight. Tomorrow morning, when he leaves and she goes out, we call your lawyer. You tell her everything you've seen. And we ask her a question. What can they do to me legally if they're already willing to lie this much?" The suggestion made my stomach tighten. I had been thinking about my house, my rooms, my things, but Mrs. Parker had just put her finger on the part of the story I was too afraid to say out loud. If they're willing to lie about money and rooms, would they also lie about me? I stared at the house. From here, it looked almost peaceful. Lights turning off one by one, shadows settling. My son probably lying in the bed in the room down the hall, right where he had slept as a teenager. Carla probably scrolling through her phone, calculating numbers, sending messages to strangers who would end up sleeping in my husband's office. Somewhere inside those walls, they were already planning a future that didn't include me as the owner, maybe not even as a person in control of her own life. On the second night, as the clock ticked toward midnight and I watched the third wave of guests settle into my house, a thought formed in my mind with terrifying clarity. If I didn't act quickly and carefully, the next thing they might try to take from me wouldn't be a room or a set of keys. It would be my legal voice, my right to decide, my autonomy. I sipped my now cold coffee and whispered, more to myself than to Mrs. Parker, "They think I'm old and blind. They have no idea I'm watching." She didn't answer. She just placed her hand over mine and squeezed gently. "Then let's make sure," she said quietly, "that when they finally realize you were watching, it's already too late for them to undo what they've done." I didn't know it yet, but the next step, calling my lawyer, would reveal the part of their plan that went way beyond renting rooms. They weren't just using my house. In reality, they were quietly preparing the perfect trap to take my entire life away. The liar and the words that froze my blood. The third morning at Mrs. Parker's, I woke up with a feeling I hadn't had in years. The quiet certainty that something was moving behind my back and that if I didn't move first, I'd lose more than just money or comfort. I'd lose myself. I went straight to the window before even brushing my hair. My house was there across the street, as always. Same brick, same front yard, same porch I had swept 1,000 times. It looked solid, unchanged, but now I knew there were invisible cracks running through it, cracks made out of lies and secret cash and strangers' footsteps in hallways I once walked half asleep with my baby in my arms. At 7:30, Daniel came out in his usual shirt and tie, briefcase in hand, like any normal man going to his office job. He locked the door, checked the knob twice, and walked to the car. Carla dropped a kiss on his cheek before he left, then stood in the doorway for a second, looking at the street. For a moment, I worried she'd look toward Mrs. Parker's window, that she'd somehow feel my eyes on her, but she didn't. She just turned back inside and closed the door. I watched them like someone watches a crime scene, memorizing details, storing them silently. When the street finally went still, Mrs. Parker came into the room behind me. "Today you call her," she said simply. "I know," I replied. We ate a quick breakfast downstairs, though I barely tasted the food. toast, coffee, a little fruit. It all felt mechanical. My mind was on the phone, lying face down on the table, as if the device itself were a door I was too afraid to open. "Do you have her number?" Mrs. Parker asked. "Yes," I swallowed. I just didn't want to drag her into something that might be my imagination. Mrs. Parker's eyes hardened. "You've seen the money. You've seen the strangers. You've seen your office turned into a hotel room. Imagination doesn't take cash at the door." She was right. I picked up the phone and scrolled through contacts until I found her name. Elena R., lawyer. Years ago, she'd been just Elena from accounting, the woman who always brought homemade cookies to staff meetings and who went back to school in her 40s to study law. I had admired her courage back then. I never thought that one day that same courage would be the only shield between me and the two people I loved most. My hands shook as I pressed call. She answered on the third ring. "Hello?" "Helena, it's me," I said, and my voice came out thinner than I wanted. "It's Marta." "Marta," she answered, immediately warmer. "It's been so long. How are you? How's retirement treating you?" Almost said fine. The word sat on my tongue out of habit, but I swallowed it. I stared at my house through Mrs. Parker's lace curtains and decided I was done lying for other people's comfort.